There's castling, en passant, and what was the other rule that we didn't go over? And stalemate. So, in chess, what is a stalemate? Well, a stalemate is when two things occur. Either there's only two kings on the board. No, three things occur, technically. There's two kings on the board. And what that means is that there's no other pieces to attack. So since there's no pieces to attack, the game's over because it was ended in a truce, or in this case, a treaty in medieval times, or in this case, a draw. So, remember, there's two kings, I'm pointing it out to you here. Only two kings left on the board, that's considered a stalemate, which is a win for both players because this is a draw. Next, you have the infamous way you could draw and get a stalemate, which is kind of like this. So, let's say your king has you only have your king left, or you have many pawns left or anything like that. But you can't move any of your king. You can't move your king or your pawns, and they're stuck. And you can't move any pieces. If you can't move any pieces and it's your turn, that's another way you can get stalemate. And then the final way you can get stalemate is just if you only have your king left and you don't have anywhere to move. If you only have now let me give you an example of that. So this is how a lot of people lose their games too, because if you don't have if you have a king and a queen left and you can't checkmate, then there's like you're up a queen but you can't win. So let me see here. I'm going to take these pieces off the board to demonstrate to you what is an example of a no king move. You can't move your king stalemate. So let me see. Where you guys can see. All right, so as you can see here, let me see. The white pieces, there's one extra white queen, then one extra black. On black only has the king left. So this would be checkmate. Now if you look at this, why is this checkmate? It's an endgame checkmate, but I'll show you why. Because the king is protecting the queen, so the king can't take the queen. Where at the same time, the king is being attacked by the queen and has nowhere else to move and can't. There's nothing you can do. So this is why that's a checkmate. But watch how ever subtle this is. Let's say, right, it's white's turn to move. Okay. And instead of moving to c8, where's the checkmate? Because look, it's under attack, it has nowhere to move. In theory. That's checkmate. But let's say, unfortunately, white's king's over here, and he's up a whole queen. He's ready to win. And what happens is, he moves. Oh yeah, let's say he moves to. He moves his queen from. Oh wait, let me see. So let's say it gets to the point, right? This is where now you saw checkmate. This is checkmate because the king is cornered and it's over, right? Talked about that. But let's say you have the queen here, right? Or not even there. We have. Oh, hey, what's up? Let's say I'm just doing a video lesson. You're good. You're good. It's okay. But let's say you have a queen here, right? So that we saw how checkmate is when you do. This would be an example of checkmate, right? But what is stalemate? So unless either you would have to have two kings left on the board, which is a draw, one for both sides, or a truce or whatever. Or watch this: if your king has nowhere to move, and you can't move any of your pieces, then it's a stalemate. And that's like the worst way to lose, because you'd be winning materially, you'd be up on the pieces, but you would be down because your opponent can't move, so it's a draw. That's why in the end of the game, especially when you don't have any pieces, when there's barely any pieces and you're up, you don't want to. You want to take your time so that you don't get in a bad position where this happens. So we went over this. Okay, this is checkmate, right? Now what is stalemate? Stalemate would be something like this. This over here. So, let's say you have the queen on c1, but instead of moving it to c8 for checkmate, finish him off, right? It's checkmate, as you can see. The king has nowhere to move, it's attacked by the queen. You move it to the unfortunate, just one square over to c7. Now, it's black's turn, because you already moved. But the white queen isn't attacking, keyword attacking, the black king. And the king has, which means the king has nowhere to move. But it's still his turn to move, so that, my friend, would be a stalemate. Because he has nowhere to move. And that would be kind of a sad stalemate too, and embarrassing. Because you were up old queen, but you didn't move, you moved one square over and you lost the game. Or you didn't lose it, but you drew it, which kind of sucks. You could have got a win. The other example, as I said, of stalemate is when you have, what do you call it? Is when you have only two kings left. That's also a stalemate. Finally, let's go into castling and en passant. Final two rules I got to teach you guys before you're ready to learn how to play for yourself is castling and en passant. We're going to start with en passant, because that's confusing. So I told you how pawns are the most, look like the dumbest, but are also the simplest pieces, not the simplest, the most complex pieces in the game. So, there's two more things you got to understand about pawns. Other than the fact that they take diagonally and move only forward and all that other stuff that I went into with the pawns. It's crazy. So, no information overload. Take a second to understand this. You have to think about it like Napoleon Bonaparte, who fought inside the French Revolution. So when Napoleon was taking over countries for France and all that, and we fought in the revolution and all that, he started as a peasant, a simple pawn, a simple foot soldier. But when he got to the other side and took over enemy territory, he became a renowned general. So, if you get your pawn to the other side of a board, what happens is you could turn that pawn on the same square into any piece you wanted to. It could be a queen, which most people do, a knight, a bishop, a rook, anything. But if your pawn starts on the second or seventh rank and it makes it to the opposite side, like in checkers, how you become a king, in this case you become a queen or any other piece. So that's important to know too. So this pawn moves up, gets over here, that pawn turns into an extra queen, which is why most professional tournament chess sets have an extra queen on the side, just in case if you were to get, another piece. Or your pawn on the other side of the board. Finally, with the pawns, we have something called en passant, which actually, or en peasant, which is part of why it's called a pawn as a peasant in German, that I went over earlier. But, let's say you have a pawn on, if you're black, the 6th rank, if you're black, and you have, if you're black, right, the black pieces, and you have your, I'm not going to go over there. Oh no, we're on the opposite. So, if you have the white pieces, right, or the red in this case because of the color on the board, if you have a white piece, pawn on, this is a very important rule, but it's very confusing, so watch this very closely. So, let's say you have, remember when I was talking about pawn charges? So, if you're the black side on the 8th, it starts on the 8th and the 7th, and your pawn, one of your pawns, watch it very closely now, is on the 4th rank. And your opponent decides to charge, and your pawn is on either side of that pawn, which would look like this. With either one of these pawns, you could take, for once, like a checker piece in front of it. First time in forever, like Frozen. Take it like this. Or, in the other situation, you wanted to, and the pawn was over here, take like this. And take it like that. Notice how when I take that way, the pawn is moving like a checker piece in front of it. Take it. That's another secret move in chess. But you can only do it the move after the pawn is charged. Which, like I said before, 2nd rank goes like this, 1, 2. And then it goes like this, or like that. And take it. So that's en passant. Finally, we have one of the more important but confusing secret rules in chess. And that, my friend, is castling. I'll show you that in a second. The final rule, but a very important rule in chess, is castling. Now, why is it called castling? Let me get the castles real quick so I can show you. Or the rooks in this case. So, as we stated before, rooks represent the 4 kingdoms of a chessboard, the four categories. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 for each corner. And now, let's say you've played through the game, right? Now, here's the 2 things you need to castle. Now, castling is important, as you're going to see in a second, because castling helps protect your king, so you don't get checkmated. Because if you get checkmated, you lose the game. So what castling does is it puts your king in a castle where it's safe, kind of like a safeguard in medieval times. So knowing that, I'll show you how to castle, and when you could castle and when you can't castle. So, to finish off this instructionary video, I'm going to teach you how to castle. Okay, and then we might go over a short game real quick so you can see what chess is like. So, in some basic nomenclature so that you know rules and don'ts inside a tournament. So this is the end of part 3 over here. So, how do you castle? Well, first thing you have, the requirement of castling. The side where you're castling has to be open. This is considered open. But this over here is considered open. Because there's no pieces blocking the king from the castle or the rook. This E and H castle is not considered open because there's a knight in the way. Now it's open. Now it's not. One more time. Now it's open. Now it's not. Monkey see, monkey do. Knowing that, here's how you castle. You move the king in the direction. Well, before I even tell you how to do it, I'm going to go over every requirement. If you move the king or pieces in the castle line, you can't castle. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, the castle line is explained like this. If an opponent's piece attacks the king and puts it in check by castling, you can't castle. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me show you. Forward. So, let's say this pawn's over here. Oh, you could castle, usually, if this bush-up wasn't stopping you from doing it. Now, let me show you what a castle would look like if the bush-up wasn't over here, okay? So,